Hello, my name is Laura Olson, and I'll be conducting today's club officer training for the secretary role. In today's training, we are going to discuss what the role of the secretary is, talk about the responsibilities of the secretary, and what the resources are available for our secretaries. Today's session, we want to identify your role, how will you fulfill your responsibilities, and find resources that will help you. The secretary responsibilities cover the club meeting, outside of the club meeting, and within the executive committee meeting. Regarding the club meeting, you'll have some duties before the club meetings, when you arrive at the club meetings, and during those club meetings. Let's talk about before the club meetings. Your first responsibility will to post the previous minutes. This is a very important task of the secretary, and I like to recommend that you will do it at least 1 week prior to your meeting. What that will allow is all of your members to thoroughly review the meeting minutes and then provide any updates that they may have. Another best practice that I'd like to share with you is how you're going to share those meeting minutes. Some clubs use free Toast and post them in the same place that they post their agendas. Other clubs email them. Do whatever works best for your members, but ensure that you get those meeting minutes out at least 1 week before your meeting. You also want to prepare a list of actions for the president. There may have been items that you noted during either your club meeting or your executive committee meeting that the president needed to follow up on. Please make sure you are also preparing that list and sending it to your president at least 1 week before your meeting to allow them to be fully prepared. And then finally, you need to update the club officers list. This is not an activity that you'll do weekly or even monthly. Most clubs elect their officers on a yearly basis. What that means is you will need to submit the incoming club officers for your upcoming year before June 30th. The reason that this is important is twofold. First of all, that's part of DCP goal number 10. There's 2 items to it: submitting club dues on time and then updating the club officer list. Second, you want to make sure that when TLI comes around, that there will be the updated club officer list. Your district will be comparing what is listed in Toastmasters Club Central for your officers listing against who is registered. And in order to get credit for attending the TLI, you must be listed in the position that you are attending. When you arrive at the club meeting, you want to circulate an attendance sheet and a guest book. And this is going to look very different if your meeting is hybrid or if you're meeting in person. If you're meeting in person, that's easy. You have a hard copy of an attendance sheet, and then you also will have a guest book. You can certainly go online to Toastmasters International and buy a Toastmasters branded guest book, or you can purchase one at your nearest office supply store and use that for your attendance book. You also want to have an attendance sheet, and on that attendance sheet, you want to have the attendee's name, their email address, and their phone number. The reason this is important is we want to follow up with any guests after our meeting to see if they need any more information before we are able to make them a member of our club. During the club meetings, you'll be responsible for reading the previous notes, noting any amendments, and then recording the current meetings. In my club, we often find it difficult for the secretary to not only take minutes of that meeting, but also hold a roll. Therefore, what my club has chosen to do is merely have them record the minutes of the executive committee meeting. However, our secretary during our meeting is responsible for updating the agenda. And that's very important because if we ever need to go back and determine a date that somebody gave a speech or a role that they filled, we have that recorded on the revised agenda. Outside of the club meeting, you are responsible for maintaining an accurate roster. Also included in that is helping your VP of membership make sure that if there's any applications out there, that those are submitted and that payments are made. So again, you have an accurate club roster. As I mentioned earlier, you also need to submit your club officer listing, and that is due on June 30th of each year. That club officer listing will be of your incoming club officers who will take their role effective July 1st. You also would handle any correspondence that comes through for your club. You may be using Free Toast Host and you have someone who may be interested in visiting your club. As a secretary, you could be the point of contact. You could be responsible for reaching out to that prospective guest and providing them with all the club details. That way they can attend your meeting and eventually turn them into a brand new member. You also have to keep club files. Things that you keep in your club files would be the agendas, as I mentioned, as well as any meeting minutes and also your club charter. It is important that you keep all of these items in a safe place. They will probably be brought back and forth by your sergeant at arms, but you must make sure that all the club files are in order. And then finally, you'll be attending the club executive committee meetings. And these are very important meetings where each of the club officers reports out to the president on what they are working on. And during that meeting, as I mentioned, you will want to make sure that you are taking minutes. One thing that I'd like to recommend to you is there is actually a template for both your club and your executive committee meetings. That is available on Toastmasters International. When you go to the brand portal, you will find it under templates. So outside of the club meeting, this is something really important that I want to spend a little bit of time on. You as a secretary will vote at international business meetings. There are two types of business meetings that are held during the Toastmasters year. The first is our district meeting. That is where we will vote our incoming district officers. During that meeting, it is your president and your vice president of education who vote during that meeting. Now, the international meeting occurs in August. That's where we'll vote the incoming international officers, region advisors. The people that vote for those positions are your president and your secretary, you. You will be getting an email that will tell you how to assign a proxy if you are unable to attend the international business meeting. You'll be able to assign that proxy to your district director, who will definitely take the time to fully vet who the candidates are and will cast a ballot for our new incoming officers. So again, just keep in mind, you vote only at international business meetings for the secretary role. Another responsibility you have outside of the club is to facilitate member progress in Basecamp. It is just not the Vice President of Education who's responsible for Basecamp, it is any club officer. Therefore, you not only want to look in Basecamp, see how your members are progressing, and then you, along with the Vice President of Education, can help nudge those members to make sure, how are you progressing within your levels? And if you notice that people aren't progressing, you can definitely work with the Vice President of Education to determine, is there more training that's needed? What do we need to do to help our new member move to the next step? A very important role is to arrange for replacement or assistance. We know that we cannot attend every meeting. There may be times that you may have a personal matter come up. Therefore, you want to make sure that you have someone that can replace you. What I would recommend doing is, rather than asking another club officer to serve in that role, is start a committee. And you would have people who would step in when you're not able to be the secretary, take the minutes for you, fulfill that role. What that will do is that will show the person that is your replacement or your assistant that the secretary role isn't really that scary. They've had that experience, so that when it comes time to do the last thing, prepare your successor for office, you are ready. Many times we have brand new members that we are asking to fill club officer roles. They obviously are scared. They think it is a lot more difficult than it is, but by having them serve as your assistant, that is going to be a great training ground for them, and I encourage you to do that early. During your executive committee meeting, you'll be reading the previous minutes from that meeting. And again, you should have sent those out at least a week prior, so all of your club officers have the opportunity to review. If there's any amendments, you will want to make sure that you go ahead and note those. And then once all amendments have been made, you will want to go ahead and vote to pass the meeting minutes. I definitely recommend that you brush up on your Robert's Rule of Law. That information is available in Toastmasters International, so you understand how to make the motion and pass the motion to approve your meeting minutes. And finally, we're going to record the current meeting minutes. After your meeting, you will once again want to send them out to all of your executive committee so they have the opportunity to read those notes and make any revisions as necessary. So, how are you going to fulfill the secretary responsibilities? When will you do them? Who will you help with? And what are some of your resources? So, how will you fulfill this responsibility? Well, you've taken the first step. You're attending TLI. You are learning more about this role so you can make sure that you are fulfilling it to the best of your ability. You also need to have an action plan that says when will each action be completed. You'll want to have certain items. For instance, we had talked about submitting club meeting minutes. You want to have a calendar that shows when you need to have those completed, updating the club officer listing, submitting it to TLI, all those things that are important. Who's available to help you? That's when you want to start thinking about who am I going to have on my committee to help be a backup? And then determine what materials and resources can you use. We will talk a little bit further in the presentation about the multitude of resources that are available through Toastmasters International. Let's look at the checklist for your resources. So, I mentioned the first one, attending district-sponsored club officer training program. That is the first step. You are coming new into the role. It is important that you understand what's expected out of your position. However, let's say you're a seasoned Toastmasters and you haven't served in a club officer role for a while. It is also important for you to attend because things change in Toastmasters. The importance of our TLI is that it helps provide information about any new updates to Toastmasters, and it is also a great opportunity to network and let you know what resources are available to you. We do find that our clubs who are struggling very often have club officers who are not fully trained. That is why whenever I am trying to recruit people for any type of club officer role, the one thing I tell them is your most important role is attending the 2 district-sponsored club officer training that happen each year. One is going to be in the summer, that's the one you're attending today, and then another one in the winter. And then read materials. In the past, we used to get a hard copy of the Club Leadership Handbook. It is now available online at Toastmasters International. It is an amazing resource. It provides timelines of when you need to do certain activities, such as your speech contest. It talks about speech contests. It talks about the district conference. It is really important to have that handbook and to read it. It's also important to read any of the district materials that come out. We have a newsletter. We have the Gavel newsletter that comes out. We have our weekly notes, all very important information. It is important that you are reading those materials and understand what applies to the secretary role. You also want to meet with the outgoing executive committee to make sure that you plan what are you going to do going forward. What they can share with you is what were some of the challenges they had, and make sure that you understand how they operated to get some best practices for yourself. It's also very important that you be meeting with the outgoing secretary. Again, it's going to share best practices. You can ask them, how do you organize yourself? What tools do you use as far as templates for meeting minutes? That person can walk you through it and again, make it a lot less treacherous for you as you take on this role. Once you have your executive committee formed, your new executive committee, you want to meet and start working on your distinguished club program. The one thing that I always caution any officer is that as you are working on that plan, you just don't want to go to the back of that document and fill out who's going to meet which goals for your distinguished club program, but you really want to work through the entire club success plan. What's important about that is going to be the foundation of your Toastmasters Club. I always tell people, I would never hire anyone to build a house for me without blueprints. Well, the club success plan is going to be your blueprint. It's going to talk about how are you going to work as an executive unit? How are you going to resolve differences? What are you looking forward to for the upcoming year? What are some of your challenges and how will you overcome them? So again, as a current executive committee, you want to work on that club success plan. You also have to make sure as a secretary that if you are not the one who's going to be submitted the newly elected club officer listing, if another officer is, you want to make sure that it's done. Sometimes it's the outgoing secretary, sometimes it's the incoming. But again, you want to make sure that that is submitted so that you get part of DCP goal number 10. And finally, if your club is meeting in person and you buy ribbons, you may have trophies, voting belts, etc. There may be some materials that you need to order. As I also mentioned, it could be your guest book that you need to order, pens, things such as that. You would work very closely with your treasurer to find out what your funds are so you can go ahead and order those materials for your club. There's some great additional resources here for you. I had talked about the Distinguished Club Program and the Club Success Plan. Here is the item number listed. Again, an online document that is going to be the blueprint for the success of your club. There is a guest book that is Toastmaster branded. If you would like to purchase that, again, that's not necessary. You're able to buy one at any office supply store. You just want to make sure that you have a guest book along with your attendance sheet. Your club officer listing is showing you, you go to submit that in toastmasters.org under Club Central. And then how do you use Toastmasters materials? You again go to toastmasters.org and click on the member lists. I cannot tell you the amazing resources that are out there for Toastmasters. I definitely encourage you to even just Google, say Toastmasters attendance sheet, and you will see that there's attendance sheets developed by other Toastmasters Club. Don't reinvent the wheel. Work smarter and not harder. I hope that today's session helped to calm your nerves and provide you some additional information about the secretary role. And I'm excited for you to start in this new position and to be the best that you can be. Thank you, and I hope that you all have a good day.